Welcome to F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans. I'm your host as always, Terry, and I'm here to keep you up to date with all of the unbiased, hard-hitting Formula 1 news. So grab your favourite mug of coffee, sit down, strap in and get yourself comfortable to join in the conversation. Because this is F1 Coffee Corner. This is Full Beans, the must-have podcast for all Formula 1 fans. Welcome to F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans the podcast. I'm your host, Terry, and welcome back to the Coffee Corner. You'll see we've had a bit of mini decoration going on if you're watching this on video. If you listen to it in the car, sorry, you can't see it, but it looks great anyway. Anyway, what have I got in store for you this week? We're going to have a very, very quick look back on Monaco because I don't want to dwell on that because, like most people, I was asleep for most of it. It felt like we're going to have a catch-up with all of the latest that's going on in the Formula 1 news in the Espresso news section of the podcast. And we're going to talk about contracts, drivers, and my predictions for next season in the coffee chat, as well as looking forward to, in the takeaway, this week's Canadian Grand Prix. So, with all of that out of the way, you've got me for the next half hour or so. So please, if you haven't already, hit that like, subscribe, follow button to be notified when the podcast drops. That's all of the housekeeping out of the way. This is the F1 Coffee Corner. Let's get straight into it. Welcome to Espresso News. Now, for those who are new to the podcast, this is where we take my daily headlines that are on my social media channels and we have a look back at some of the stories on there that have caught our eye since the last podcast. Now, the first one up that got my attention was Pierre Gasly. And so Pierre Gasly is refusing to commit to Alpine and adds that he wants to be fighting for better positions. Some are seeing this as a sign that he's not ready to sign for Alpine and he's looking at other options. My take on this one is very different. I think Pierre Gasly is a pretty shoo-in for that Alpine role. We all know what's happened with Esteban Ocon and him. Well, he's not been released by Alpine. That's kind of wrong. He's just not having his contract renewed. But either way, Ocon and Alpine at the end of this season are going their different ways. Now, with regards to Pierre Gasly, we're being told he was offered a new contract around the Imola time, and that kind of explains where they've been thinking with what happened in Monaco, which we'll come on to in the next section, and also just the way the general feeling is around the team. So I'm fully expecting Pierre Gasly to commit to Alpine, and I think it's just him probably just trying to bump up his value a bit when it comes to that contract. We've got McLaren doing more testing with their reserve driver in the MCL 36 in Austria yesterday. Now, with regards to reserve testing, there's a lot going on at the moment. We saw Mercedes have put a big post out about reserve testing. We know they're obviously driving Kimmy Antonelli in terms of giving him experience in the Formula 1 cars. Alpine and Jack Doohan has been doing a lot, which we'll come on to in the next part, around driver moves. And we also know that Aston Martin have got Jack Crawford in theirs as well, coming up as well. I think he's going in the, I want to say the AMR 22, but it might be the AMR 23. But certainly he's going to run out in that car as well. So lots and lots of teams plowing into their development in terms of the regulations. Now they can run the older cars. They're trying to do a lot of these programs. So interesting to see on that one. Fred Vasseur saying about the arrival of Lewis Hamilton will not risk him and Charles taking points off each other, and he sees it as a positive. This is in response to a lot of people talking about how are they going to get on as teammates, and a lot of people wondering if actually Ferrari are risking the constructors title by having two number one drivers effectively, because with Lewis and Charles, are they going to take points off each other, which in turn is going to hamper Ferrari in terms of the constructors championship standing. Now, Fred Vasseur has been very keen on this. What he's been saying is actually he thinks they're going to drive each other on. He feels it's a real positive. They're going to bring the best out of each other. When they get to the point in the season they need to, they're declaring number one driver, but up until that point, they're free to race. And yeah, I'm not too sure which way this goes. A lot of people have been talking about Checo and Red Bull and how actually having a weaker number two driver might cost you the constructors. Interesting to see that they're seeing it now as well-established number two driver might do the same thing. So I'm not quite sure what some fans are expecting the teams to do, that's for sure. But either way, Lewis and Charles is certainly going to be one to keep an eye on for next season, that's for sure. Just flicking through some of these now. We've got Pirelli saying they don't agree with Lewis Hamilton's assessment that the Formula 1 tyres are the peakiest ever, and says it's more down to the field being closer. I'm kind of with Lewis on this one. I don't think it's to the extent of what he's saying, but I don't think the tyres are helping the current racing within Formula One. I think that with regards to Formula One, there's a lot of issues with the tyres and strategy and making it exciting. And I think currently, when you think about it logically, when you think about what we used to have different compounds when it comes to starting the Grand Prix. We used to have multiple strategies. We're not seeing that. We're seeing teams covering each other off literally like for like in terms of tyres and strategy, and even when they pit, which makes it a lot less boring. So I do see where Lewis is going with this, where what he's saying is actually, when you think about the tyre strategy, you don't get what we had in Barcelona a few years ago where Mercedes went for a free stop to hunt Red Bull down. That's the kind of thing I think he's meaning, and I'm inclined to agree with him on that. We're not seeing that from the tyres. No one wants the tyres to be unsafe. We know that with the increase in weight, the increase in size, they're put under a massive amount of load, but ultimately, we need to see more strategy. I want to see more tyre wear, but I don't want to see more tyre wear in the sense of it makes the cars dangerous. That's not at all what I mean. We've got Resta has now officially left Ferrari, is on garden leave before taking up his role with Mercedes as their new strategic development director. Logan Sargent says he feels he's made a step forward this season. I don't think it's enough, if I'm honest. I don't think that Logan's got enough to keep that seat at Williams. We're not hearing any signs that it's kind of on the options, to be honest, but you never know, strange things happen. But I think Logan's, it's too late for him, unfortunately. We've got Ralf Schumacher says that Red Bull need Checo for sponsor income to cushion the blow on Max's salary. We all know what happened there. We'll come on to that one in the coffee chat. Gunther Steiner has dismissed Williams' interest in Adrian Newey and Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz as wishful thinking. I'm not sure I agree with Gunther on that one. I think Carlos is probably a safer bet than Adrian going to Williams. Obviously, we don't know what's going on with Adrian at the moment in terms of what he's thinking, where he's thinking about going. Clearly in discussion with multiple people, might just retire, as we've all been saying, might go to another team, might take a break. All these options for Adrian are still on the table, but I think that actually Carlos Sainz to Williams is a lot more on the table than what Gunther's saying on that one. We've got, let's just have a look what else we've got. Looking at it. Zach Brown saying he's ready for Andretti. It's the buyer team. Massive wheel turn on this one from the FIA, saying that Andretti needs a buyer team rather than actually becoming the 11th team on the Formula One grid, including obviously Mohammed Ben Sulayem saying the same thing. It looks as if the only way Andretti are getting into Formula One now is by buying a team. We know that the FIA presidential elections are coming up in about 18 months' time. And it's quite clear he's doing some damage limitation in terms of the stuff where the FIA and Formula One have been at loggerheads. We're seeing a bit of a backtracking from Mohammed Ben Sulayem in terms of that. So I think he's trying to smooth a lot of the tension over, especially with re-election season about to kick into full swing. And of course the Concord negotiations as well. Both quite crucial to him if he wants to remain as the FIA president, that's for sure. Las Vegas organisers saying they're not resting on last year and have taken some key learnings, including better pricing and driver commitments. I hope so. Bear in mind we're heading to Vegas. I will take better pricing Las Vegas Grand Prix organisers any day of the week. For those of you who don't follow the page, Dad and I will be flying out to Las Vegas for the Grand Prix in November. We're flying out beginning of the week. We're there for the Grand Prix and then we fly back straight afterwards. We've got our flights booked. We've got our accommodation booked and we have also had our visas back as well. So the only thing left to book is race tickets, which we haven't done that yet. There's over 24 different options for race tickets for Las Vegas. So at the moment, we're kind of weighing up, budget, value for money. If you go on their website, it can be quite confusing what you're getting. It can be quite confusing what deal you can have. And also some are better than the others. So when you look at the small print, there's actually quite a bit of difference in the packages available. So we are still looking around to see which one gives us the best value for money while we're there. But generally can't wait to go to Vegas. Obviously we've got Silverstone coming up 4 weeks away now. We're there on the race day. So again, back to Silverstone is going to be amazing. Watching the race. We're in the village enclosure this year. Trying somewhere different in terms of where we see the race from, see different parts of Silverstone really. We don't get to see too much of it on a race day, as you can imagine. So we didn't do the qualifying where you went round the stands, so we thought we'd try somewhere a bit different. So we're in a village enclosure this year, which will be great. Can't wait to get back to see Formula One racing. We've got, there you go, Jack Crawford is driving the AMR 22. So was right, it is the AMR 22. George Russell has denied Mercedes losing pace as Trent wraps up over race weekend. George, I'm not sure I agree, mate, with this one. So this is about Mercedes being really good on a Friday. Then when it comes to Saturday, they're not as good. It's quite clear Mercedes are running either lighter fuel or they're running a higher engine mode on the Friday compared to their competitors. We know Red Bull don't like to run a high engine mode on a Friday. That's not what they do at all. They tend to save it for the Saturday. Mercedes have quite clearly got this option of going out there and blasting, some good times in with their engine turned up and putting them towards the top of the table in terms of the timing sheets. But when it comes to Saturday, it kind of puts them back where they should be in the middle of the pack. Strange saying that, but yeah, that's where Mercedes are currently. So when we get that Friday thing and everyone gets excited that have Mercedes turn the corner, come the Saturday, they're back where they belong. So yeah, I'm not buying that one, George. I'm the same as that one. I think that personally, Mercedes just don't mess with it and they like to turn it up to give themselves a feel-good factor of putting themselves towards the top of the timing sheets when the reality is they're not going to be there come qualifying or the race day itself. But we don't know for sure. But definitely when it comes to Red Bull, they run with a lower engine mode setting, and McLaren seems to be doing the same recently as well. Talk about McLaren. The one thing I did want to talk about is that stupid story about the fuel pumps and the FIA investigating it. Now, with this is just absolute rubbish because when it comes to the FIA and the fuel pumps, so we all remember 2019, Ferrari being investigated for messing with the fuel flow on the engines and getting that settlement that was undisclosed by the FIA. Now, with regards to that one, we've got the fuel pump is a part that's been given by the FIA. So it's an FIA part. It's a standard part with all of the teams. It's not one the teams manufacture themselves. The FIA dictate the spec. They dictate everything about that part, and all of the teams use the same. Now, this story broke out over the weekend that the FIA had asked for Mercedes to supply McLaren a fuel pump to investigate it based on comments that Charles Leclerc said. Now, for a start, Charles Leclerc talked about the engine deployment, which is absolutely nothing to do with the fuel flow. So I'm not quite sure how that's a link to the story. The story has since been deleted once people realised they looked silly on it. However, in true Formula One fashion, it's been retweeted and used as something where the FIA are investigating. They're not. It's not. It's a non-starter, like I said. It's a standard part supplied by the FIA. Once the Ferrari incident had happened, they actually put an extra fuel monitor in terms of the fuel flow. It used to have one. It's now got two, top and bottom, to measure the flow of it. The fuel samples are taken after every single session. So we're not just talking about qualifying or the race. Every practice session has fuel samples taken out. They do a check on the fuel samples. And then what they also do is they also run a more in-depth check on fuel as well when they pick a team at random. They've already done McLaren and not found anything wrong with their fuel. So I'm not sure what this story is all about, but rest assured it is complete and utter rubbish. Plus, when it comes to the fuel pumps, they're actually sealed in between races to stop them being tampered. So the FIA wouldn't do it out of that either, because when they finish a race, they're sealed, ready for the next race. And then when they get to the track, they take the seals off. That's how they prove they've not been messing with the engines and stuff. So yeah, really not sure where this story's come from or why it's on there anymore. But even so, if you do read it, it is completely utter rubbish. And I think that's all I've got for the Espresso news. I don't think there's anything else major going on in the world of Formula One, because we're going to cover driver news and obviously Sergey Perez in the next part. So stay with me as we get ready for the coffee chat. So, coffee chat. Let's just quickly touch on Monaco. I don't want to go through the results because it was a snooze fest. We all know it was. In terms of the impact of Monaco. So we saw that incident with Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, and I think everyone is in agreement that it's a penalty and that Esteban was wrong for going after it because that gap was never there to start off with. A couple of things to point out with this one, which kind of not changed the thinking because I think it's the right decision. But when you take it into context, it makes a bit more sense. First thing is Esteban Ocon was pushed towards the barrier by Pierre Gasly before that incident, which obviously wasn't shown on TV or in any of the clips. So it's quite clearly an overreaction by Esteban based on what's happened with the racing going into that corner. Now, I'm not excusing it at all. Esteban was in the wrong for going for that gap. It was never on. But the other interesting thing is when you think back to Australia last year, so the two Alpines collided out of the race. The FIA stewards actually deemed that there was no action to be taken because it involved teammates and that the team, because it's one team, were happy with that and didn't actually get any penalties or anything afterwards. So interestingly, that this collision 12 months later is deemed as a penalty for Esteban Ocon. Now, if you remember back to Australia, that was clearly Pierre Gasly's fault. He rejoined the track very unsafely, took Esteban out. That was on the back of that massive restart. So again, it's a teammate battle, but the stewards are not consistent in their ruling. And this goes back to my point about Sergey Perez. I did a video on this, and in true fashion, it goes viral and everyone reads the wrong part of the video. And that's with regards to Nico Hulkenberg, Kevin Magnuson, and Sergey Perez crashing on the opening lap. Now, what I meant was that Kevin didn't go to the stewards was not because I think Kevin was guilty for the accident. What I meant was it's interesting that the stewards were very quick to say no further action. Now, we all know Kevin Magnuson is on 10 penalty points. So if he's found guilty of any driving offence, pretty much, especially causing an accident, he's getting a ban. And it felt like the FIA bottled it in terms of the stewards because of that reason. Now, I don't think that it was anything bar a racing incident. My point to the video was they should have still gone to the stewards. The stewards should have investigated it. They should have looked at it a lot more. Because if you look at the comments on that video, people are blaming Checo, people are blaming Kevin Magnuson, people are saying it's a racing incident. When you add all of those things into the mix, it's clear it's not a clean-cut incident. So it should have been investigated further. Now, when you refer something to the stewards, you're not saying somebody's guilty. What you're saying is we need to look at this in a lot more depth. We need to do a bit more research into this. We need to make sure that we've got this right. So they would look at the telemetry, they would look at the onboards, they would get the driver's point of view, they would get the team's point of view. And they didn't do any of that. They kind of just went under the red flag. Yeah, that's fine. No further investigation needed. It's a lap one incident. Oh, Esteban, you're a lap one incident. We're going to give you a penalty. So even that in itself doesn't make sense. Now, I appreciate on lap one, the pack is a lot more closer and we tend to not give out penalties. My point is this inconsistency with it. It should have been investigated further. They should have looked at it in more detail. They should have talked to the drivers involved to get their view on it. You only have to look at the press releases that followed that Monaco Grand Prix with Kevin Magnuson saying, I believe it's Checo's fault, Checo saying, I believe it's Kevin's fault. It clearly was at loggerheads with each other. So if anything, it would have calmed tensions by having them both in to talk to the stewards about it so they could both give their say on it and kind of present a united front in the press afterwards to say, actually, we've been to the stewards have ruled, it's a racing incident, no further action needed. And they might well have, in fact, they probably would have ruled the same ruling. My point was I just personally felt it should have been investigated more, and the FIA kind of bottled it because of where Kevin Magnuson was in regards to penalty points. And it's going to be interesting to see, because he's got a while, I think August before he's drop off, that actually, if he's in an incident again, a driving incident, whether or not the same thing happens. I've got a single suspicion it might do, because the FIA, whilst they like to play the big bads, if you get 12 penalty points, you're going to get a driving ban. It seems to be when push them to shove and the ban's actually about to be delivered, they back off a bit and go, actually, we don't want to be responsible for banning somebody. So they might need to put a race ban in place to actually prove to everybody that they're going to follow through with it. I don't know. But like I said, it will be very interesting to see if Magnuson gets involved in another incident, what the stewards do about it, that's for sure. Because I'm not entirely sure, given Kevin's record this year, that he's going to be out of trouble for the whole of August, July and August, going into when his points actually drop off. Then, of course, we've got just the rest of it. Charles Leclerc, really happy Charles Leclerc won in Monaco. It'd be a weight lifted off him after the pressure that he's been under to perform well at Monaco, the Monaco curse, as they all call it. I would like to see Oscar done well, and in terms of win a race, I want to see Oscar win a race. That's just a personal thing for me. I think he's a great driver, huge potential, world championship material, and I think that he's going to go from strength to strength when he gets that first race win. So that's just a personal viewpoint from me, but I'm absolutely delighted for Charles Leclerc. I think it showed the gap in terms of the field. I think we've now got this Red Bull, this McLaren, this Ferrari, and then we've got this gap then to Aston Martin and Mercedes. There's even like a bigger gap appearing. Aston Martin have gone backwards with their updates. Mercedes keep telling us that they're understanding the car more, but it's not actually translating to on-track performance, is it? We're no further ahead with this new concept as what we were with zero side pod concept. In fact, if you look at the championship standings, they've gone backwards since they changed the concept, which kind of makes you think, did they react too quick on it? Should they have actually carried on with zero side pods? Strange that we're starting now talk about it as maybe that should have been an option for them, but who knows? Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Ultimately, they're not in the hunt for podiums or race wins currently, and they're going to want to change it. But with regards to Monaco, lots been said about the Monaco Grand Prix. I'm a bit loath to to change things for Monaco in terms of making it from one race and make it, artificially influence it. I think that's a shame if we have to do that. I feel that all the races should be on the calendar for merit, and if we're having to artificially influence something, something's wrong. I think Monaco is one of those Grand Prix that's better way there. It's got huge importance in terms of the commercial revenue for Formula One. Yeah, it brings in all these people, all of this money. And whilst we may not appreciate that as fans, I'm sure the teams appreciate it as sponsors and in terms of sponsorship money coming in. So I think we got to weigh that one up as well. It could be a hindrance if we took Monaco off all the teams, which they ain't going to be happy about. But either way, I think we've got to do something. I'm just not quite sure what. You keep hearing about soft tyres, especially for mandatory stops. For me, a simple rule under the red flag would be that if you change the tyres, you've got to keep the same compound. Ultimately, that's what caused the problem on this one. They changed the compounds, and actually they can then say they've made the pit stop. That's wrong. If you change a front wing, it's got to be the same spec front wing. So therefore, if you're going to change the tyres, take a medium set tyres off, you've got to put medium set back on. Take a hard set off, got to put hard on, soft and soft. That makes it a lot more easier, because then the teams wouldn't have made that mandatory pit stop. Okay, they might have just covered each other off, but you might have had a slow stop somewhere, a faulty stop, and made it a little bit more exciting. To go through a Grand Prix with no pit stops was just a bit surreal and a little bit boring. So hopefully they can take some away from that. But like I say, I'm very loath to artificially influence a Formula One championship race. It just feels wrong on that front. Let's talk driver market. Now, for those who follow me, you'll know that I did an article for Fanamp. So an absolutely shameless plug there. If you haven't, please go check it out. It's got all of my reason behind my driver market moves for 2025. So I made my prediction for who I think is going to line up on the driver grid for 2025. Now, a couple of those have come true since then, and those are that Sergey Perez has re-signed with Red Bull. That was announced yesterday. The biggest shock of that, it's a 2-year deal. We were all expecting a 1-year deal, but Checo's got himself a 2-year deal. Don't underestimate how much money Checo brings into Red Bull. We saw that comment earlier on the Espresso News from Ralf Schumacher about the offset of money, the 30-odd million. So there's estimations Checo brings in about $30 million to Red Bull. Now, his contract ain't nowhere near that. In fact, he's probably struggling to get to half that. It's probably around the $10 million, I'd say, as a base contract. Now, with that in mind, that gives Red Bull $20 million towards Max, Adrian's salary in the past. Obviously, we know he's going to be still being paid at the moment currently. And also the commercial value of having Checo in countries where Red Bull do well because they've got Checo. So, typically Latin America. So there's pockets of having Checo in your commercial side in terms of having him in your team that benefit Red Bull in not just sponsorship, but also bottom line sales of Red Bull. So he brings a lot of money to Red Bull. So that's not to be underestimated. And the team are happy with him. Max is happy to have him as a partner. So it was no real surprise for that one. Like I say, the biggest shot was it's still the end of 2026, but it is what it is. We all expected that. Now, in terms of what that means for the driver market, the other move that we know about is, of course, what I talked about, is Esteban Ocon is leaving Alpine at the end of the season. So he is definitely going somewhere else. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look to see who I got for my driver moves for 2025. So Red Bull is now confirmed Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. With Lance Stroll, I feel it's a case of he'll just be renewed. He's made some noise recently about how he's committed to the project. I don't think we're going to be seeing a change in drivers for that one until 2026 when they get the Honda engine. So I'm fully expecting that one to continue. Then, of course, we've got Ferrari with Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, as we know, already confirmed. We've got Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at McLaren, already confirmed. Then we come on to Mercedes. We've got George Russell. Now, I've put Kimmy Antonelli as my pick for Lewis's vacancies at Mercedes. Reasoning behind this is when Kimmy was first talked about, we talked about a loan deal, we talked about bringing them in. That's all gone quiet. That's gone really quiet. Now, whether or not it's because Williams aren't open to that or because Toto doesn't want to lose Kimmy Antonelli by loaning him out to a team and then something else happening, or whether or not he just don't like the options available to him. It seems, from what we're hearing and seeing, that Kimmy's going to get that seat at Mercedes. Obviously based around getting him into the garage, getting him used to meeting the team, getting him used to talking to people, and then also giving him some experience before the new regulations kick in. So that's my thinking behind why they're going to do that move. And I feel that if he was going to go to Williams, we would have heard more talk and that super license dispensation go through, which we're hearing nothing about at the moment. So makes me think they've put that on hold because they don't need it currently this season. Haas, Ollie Behrman, we know that that's pretty much a shoo-in from what we've been told, that Ferrari have pushed and pushed, and they've got Ollie Behrman into that seat. Now, the second seat, I've actually gone for Valtteri Bottas. Now, there's been talk about Esteban Ocon getting that seat, clearly in negotiations. So a lot of leads have got these drivers could fit into a few of them. But I've gone for Valtteri Bottas. I think that he brings that real experience, that character to Haas. I think Gene Haas will like that. I think that Komatsu will like that. And I think he's a good fallback for Oliver Behrman in the sense of someone to learn from. So I think that Bottas makes a great teammate, and Haas can buy into that, get a driver who in the past wouldn't be available, and a multiple race winner in Valtteri Bottas. So I'm still seeing that one. But of course, Bottas to Williams is still an option as well. Stake, they've got Nico Hulkenberg confirmed. I've gone for Esteban Ocon. I've just read an article from The Mirror. That's a really good source normally. Daniel Moxon, who does the Mirror articles, is really knowledgeable, really good. And he's saying the same as me, that he's saying that if they don't get Carlos Sainz at stake, their next one is Esteban Ocon. So I'm quite glad that. I'm quite glad that he's kind of backed that up, because that's my thinking. He's used to working with big teams, used to working with manufacturers. He's got some really good ties with Mercedes. As we know, he's Mercedes junior driver still officially. So I'm not surprised to see that influence as well being kicked down the grid. So I'm expecting Esteban Ocon. But of course, Haas for him could be another option. Williams, Alex Albon's been confirmed. I'm going for Carlos there. I think that if Carlos was going to sign for Mercedes, he would have done it by now. I think Mercedes want Kimmy. I don't think they want Carlos. And I think with regards to the Audi deal, the stake F1 deal, Sauber, whatever we're calling them these days, I think that if he was going to sign for that, he would have already done that. He seems to have left this on the table for a long time, meaning he's got some doubts about it. He's got some worries about it. Otherwise, why wouldn't you have signed already? So I've got Carlos going to Williams. We also know in Monaco, there was a big meeting with Carlos Sainz, his management team, James Vowles, and one of the Williams board members flew in for it as well. That normally means we're at the real nitty-gritty of a contract negotiation. It was done after qualifying. It was done when the paddock was pretty quiet, obviously in the hope that people wouldn't see it. I'm expecting a Carlos announcement in the run-up to the Spanish Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's when we're going to get that big announcement. Carlos himself is open to that. He's talked about a long-term deal. He talked about it being decided in a few weeks. That fits with either stake or Williams, which I think are his two options. And I'm hedging my bets with Williams at the moment. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, we would expect him to re-sign, as I talked about earlier. Now, the second one is a bit of a debate, really. We're hearing Joe's in the frame for it. We're hearing Jack Doohan's naturally in the frame for it. And also Mixumacher, which is where my pick is. So my pick is Mixumacher. The reason I think this is Bruno Famine's been talking very highly about Mick. He's got experience. He's experienced a lot since leaving Haas. He's worked, obviously, with Mercedes, and he's also been doing WEC for Alpine. Alpine have got access to his data. They're obviously happy with what he's doing in terms of WEC. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him in the sim as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if they've sort of road tested him in terms of what he can do with him in terms of the factory. So I'm still going with Mixumacher. I'm also seeing an increase in Alpine's Mixumacher content as well, which is normally a surefire hit that something's around the corner with regards to these teams' announcements. But equally, I still think that Jack Doohan could get a look in there. They're going to want, after what happened with Oscar, the academy to work. So is their answer to put Jack into it? Because otherwise it kind of makes a mockery of the Alpine academy system. So yeah, it'd be good to see that one, that's for sure. With regards to then that leaves Visa Cash App RB. Now I feel that Visa Cash App RB, they're going to remain the same. I think they're going to have the same lineup as what they had before. I think that they've got it in there, and they're going to lock in Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. Completely lost my chain of thought there. But yeah, they've got Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda. I think one more season. I think Liam Lawson's going to miss out. But I think they're going to stay with that partnership. Yuki's tied into the Honda deal. He's going to be the one they're going to want to see forward. It's too political to have a fallout with Honda in the last year of the contract. Why do you need to? And I don't think Yuki's options are that good for a move away from him with what's currently on the grid. So I think they're going to stay with Yuki. They're going to stay with Daniel because of the commercial value behind that one. And that's going to seal that one. And Liam Lawson will be promised to see in 2026. And I think that is going to be how they smooth it over. But that is my driver prediction for the grid for 2025. Like I say, the full article is available on FanAmp, so if you get a chance, please head on over and check that one out. Let me know what you think. Let me know your comments. Let me know your thoughts on how close you think I've got it. Do you think I'm completely wrong? Do you think I might be onto something? I'm telling you now, it won't be 100%. There'll be some surprises in there, and I'm intrigued to know what those surprises are. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts on who you feel are going to fill those vacant seats for 2025. Now, with that in mind, let's have a quick look forward to the Montreal Grand Prix, Canada, and what can we expect from this weekend. Right, here we go. Montreal and the Canadian Grand Prix. Let's have a look at the book and see what we can expect from this week's Grand Prix. It says, so Montreal and the Canadian Grand Prix. And here we go. This is your race preview. There are Formula 1 circuits built in open spaces like Silverstone, and others are hemmed in by their surroundings like Monaco or the home of the Canadian Grand Prix, Montreal. Built on an island across the St. Lawrence River from Montreal, the plot is less than ideal, as there's so little space with the 1976 Olympic Games rowing course narrowing the plot behind the pitch yet further. The approach to the first corner is through a right-hand kink, and there's often a concertina effect here on lap 1 that can catch out those behind. Running wide on the exit can put cars out of position for turn 2, where the track doubles back to feed the cars onto an arcing run between woods and water that is interrupted by a chicane and later a sharp left. The flow picks up again with just a right-left essay before the drivers reach the lap's tightest hairpin. It's a perfect place for a dive at the inside in front of the grandstands, but it's tight enough to make any move there a gamble. The track then runs alongside the rowing lake, hitting its fastest point, where the cars will top 195 miles per hour. It looks as though they're heading directly into the pits before having to brake hard for the lap's final corner, a right-left chicane that offers two things. The first is the most likely place for overtaking, but the second is, of course, the Wall of Champions. Drivers getting it wrong here have been frequent, and is once known as the Champions Wall because so many champions obviously clicked it. We've got a pole time was set last year in 2023. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, 1 minute 25.858. The fastest lap last year was Sergey Perez with a 1 minute 14.481. And the lap record is held by Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes of 1 minute 13.078. Now, with regards to tyres, we've got the softest ones available. We've got the C3, the C4, the C5 compound tyres. And with regards to the race itself, we got 70 laps, race distance of 305.27 kilometres, and a circuit length of 4.361 kilometres with 2 DRS zones. The weather forecast is looking rather interesting. It's looking like it's going to be wet, and it's looking like there's going to be some rain for most of the sessions, which is going to make it really interesting. And that is your quick Montreal Canadian Grand Prix preview for this weekend. So with that in mind, that is all I've got for you this week. With regards to myself, I had a busy month last month. I'm looking forward to a bit of quiet before we head to Silverstone. There is some news with regards to the F1 Coffee Corner. By the time this podcast comes out, it should be announced, but I have signed with WT F1 Talent. I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with a great organisation and some amazing creators, and to just get some more content and some more opportunities, and to just really get going with them. It's been something we've talked about, and I'm really delighted to be signing with them and launching that next part of the F1 Coffee Corner. It doesn't change anything in terms of the normal content you get. The podcast is still here. The writing, the work that I'm doing with FanAmp is still there as well. So you won't see any difference in terms of the content you get from me. Hopefully you'll see a bit more access, a bit more opportunity, and also just coming on for the ride, really, because for me, it's a real big milestone for the F1 Coffee Corner. We started, drinking in a kitchen, drinking coffee, not really knowing where this is going to go. And all of you have been so supportive, and I can't thank you enough for all of the kind messages that I get. Yeah, ultimately, like I said, I do this as a hobby. It's something I do to give me that sort of break from the care responsibilities, and to get something like this, it means a lot. So I really thank everyone for that, because I appreciate every single person who interacts with, the various platforms we're now on. I mean, sat here now, we've got a podcast, We're on social media across all of the major platforms. Now this as well. Quite a choking moment. So yeah, thank you for all of the support on that one. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to doing some amazing things with WTF1 Talent. And also, like I say, they've got a stable of great creators, and I'm really excited to be part of it. It's really exciting part for F1 Coffee Corner to be part of. It fits with everything in terms of what we're doing going forward. So yeah, super news from me. So with that in mind, I'm going to bid you farewell. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please hit that like, follow, subscribe button. It really means the world to me, bumps the numbers up, and also it might mean that some people get to listen to a podcast who may not have heard it or know anything about it. So I really appreciate it. And also you'll be notified when the podcast drops, so it makes it nice and easy for you. But with that in mind, without further ado, got the coffee. See you next week.